वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीर पराए जाने रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीर पराए जाने रे। पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान ना आने रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीर पराए जाने रे। सकल लोक मां सहुने वंदे, निंदा न करे केनी रे। वाच काछ मन निश्चल राखे, धन धन जननी तेनी रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीर पराए जाने रे। समदृष्टि ने तृष्णा त्यागी, पर स्त्री जेने मात रे। जिह्वा थकी असत्य न बोले, पर धन नव छाले हाथ रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीर पराए जाने रे। मोह माया व्यापे नहीं देने, दृढ़ वैराग्य जेना मन मारे। राम नाम शु ताली लागी, सकल तीरथ तेना तन मारे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीर पराए जाने रे। वण लोभी ने कपट रहित छे, काम क्रोध निवारा रे। भणे नर संयो तेनु दर्शन करता, कुळ एको तेरे तार्या रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीड़ पराए जाने रे। पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान ना आने रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे, पीड़ पराए जाने रे। रतन धन पायो।
वस्तु अमोलिक दी मेरे सतगुरु,
वस्तु अमोलिक दी मेरे सतगुरु।
कृपा कर अपनायो।
पायो जी मैंने राम रतन धन पायो। पायो जी मैंने राम रतन धन पायो। पायो जी मैंने राम रतन धन पायो। आ मंदिर मस्जिद गिरजाघर ने बांट लिया भगवान को। मंदिर मस्जिद गिरजाघर ने बांट लिया भगवान को। धरती बाटी सागर बाटा मत बांटो इंसान को। धरती बाटी सागर बाटा मत बांटो इंसान को। मंदिर मस्जिद गिरजाघर ने बांट लिया भगवान को। मंदिर मस्जिद गिरजाघर ने बांट लिया भगवान को। धरती सारा मत बांटो धरती सारा मत बांटो। अभी राह तो शुरू हुई है मंजिल लेकिन दूर है। अभी राह तो शुरू हुई है मंजिल लेकिन दूर है।
उजियाला महलों में बंद है, हर दीपक मजबूर है।
उजियाला महलों में बंद है, हर दीपक मजबूर है। मिला न सूरज का संदेशा हर घाटी मैदान को। मिला न सूरज का संदेशा हर घाटी मैदान को। धरती बाटी सागर बाटा मत बांटो इंसान को। धरती बाटी सागर बाटा मत बांटो इंसान को। मंदिर मस्जिद गिरजाघर ने बांट लिया भगवान को। मंदिर मस्जिद गिरजाघर ने बांट लिया भगवान को। धरती सारा मत बांटो धरती सारा मत बांटो धरती सारा
of the Sarvodaya International Trust and the India International Centre, it is my privilege as Managing Trustee to welcome you all here to this function which commemorates the commencement of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Each year, the Trust observes Gandhi Jayanti and the International Day of Non-Violence. We also observe Martyrs' Day in our efforts to invigorate and revive Gandhian ideals in a variety of meaningful ways through music, talks, lectures, drama, film, poetry, and prose. This particular year takes on more significance in the light of the celebrations by the government and the NGOs and by the national chapters of the Sarvodaya International Trust in major cities of our country. Today, when we face what are probably the greatest challenges history has ever known, when millions of people are troubled, uncertain, and confused, the rich deposits of inspiration left by preceding generations take on a new and vital significance. Now more than ever are people in need of faith and hope, of courage and peace of mind, of standards and ideals by which to live, and above all, an abiding belief in the future. Many of our solutions turn to Gandhiji and are ever appealing to give us more perspective and understanding of life. This evening, we are privileged to have as our chief guest Mr. Pavan K. Varma, distinguished diplomat, writer, and politician who's an erudite speaker, whose well-known books cover a vast array of subjects and areas of interest. It is also a pleasure to welcome Mrs. Renu Varma and other distinguished guests who are present. So, friends, let's bring to life the teachings of the great Mahatma through a mosaic of hues and forms and reflect on what each one of us can do in our communities in dedication to the International Day of Nonviolence. Our chief guest, Mr. Pavan Varma, specialized in history and law and joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1976. His career as a diplomat saw him serve in several locations, including New York, where he was with India's permanent mission to the UN. In Moscow, he was the director of the Jawaharlal Nehru Cultural Center at the Indian Embassy. He served as India's ambassador to Bhutan and Cyprus, and he was India's first IFS officer selected to be the director of the Nehru Center in London. After retiring from Foreign Service in 2013, Mr. Varma became cultural advisor to the Chief Minister of Bihar. His foray into politics as advisor to Chief Minister Bihar took him to being a member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, until 2016. He is currently the National General Secretary and National Spokesperson of the Janata Dal. Above all, Mr. Varma's passion for writing has taken him to the depths of Indian culture. Amongst his much acclaimed books, some of them are Ghalib, The Man, The Times, Havelis of Old Delhi, The Great Indian Middle Class, Being Indian, The Truth About Why the 21st Century Will Be India's, Becoming Indian, The Unfinished Revolution of Culture and Identity, and many, many more. Today, he will address us on Adi Shankaracharya and Mahatma Gandhi, The Coincidence of Belief. His book on Adi Shankaracharya was published this year, and we look forward to his views on the understanding of the belief systems of both these great men. I welcome you all once again, and I now call upon our keynote speaker, Mr. Pavan Varma, to kindly deliver his address. Once again, a warm welcome.
I was just checking how long I have to speak. I'm delighted this evening to be speaking of this at this meeting of the Sarvodaya International Trust. And I want to thank Mrs. Indira Varma, the chairperson of the trust, Dr. Jyoti Bose, the managing trustee, the distinguished trustees themselves, and to thank you all for being here. I don't think this is an easy subject to speak on. While there was, in my view, much that was common between the Jagat Guru and Mahatma Gandhi, it is true that they followed different vocations. They were removed in time by almost 12 centuries. At least one was unaware of the other, unless as the Jagat Guru he knew both the future and the past. Certainly, Mahatma Gandhi was aware of Adi Shankaracharya. The Jagat Guru's overwhelming preoccupation was philosophy. not as a Srishti Chintak, trying to make sense of the empirical world, but as a Paramarthik Chintak, trying to understand what could be the underlying truth of our own lives, our puny lives, the bewildering plurality of this world and this vast cosmos. The other will be remembered in history certainly for many things, but certainly for the fact that his quest was for another kind of freedom, which was largely political in nature, the freedom of India from colonial yoke. One was a philosopher, one was a political activist. So where do they meet? In my view, they meet because essentially, irrespective of whatever they were pursuing, including philosophy, they were both inspired by a deeply spiritual vision. Now, I'm deliberately, can I request people to switch off their mobile phones? I speak extempore and it breaks my chain of thought. Thank you. So I was saying that both were inspired by a spiritual vision. And here I'm making a distinction between spirituality and religion. In the one case, it has a lot to do with the practice of religion, which includes the ritual of religion. And in the case of spirituality, it is an underlying and inflexible courage of conviction about what is the truth and how do we reach there. And in that sense, whether you are a political activist or a rigorous philosopher, somewhere, your vision will be telescoped. There is an occasion where, imbued with this higher spirituality, it is said that Mahatma Gandhi once said that I do not mind if all the scriptures in Hinduism are taken away from me, provided this one shlok of the Isha Upanishad remains with us. Purnamida, Purnamidim, Purnat Purn Madachyate, Purnasya Purnamadai Purnameva Vashishyate. This is full, that is full. From fullness comes. Fullness taken away from fullness, and fullness still remains. And that indeed is the notion of Brahm. That higher spiritual power, that pulsating energy and consciousness pervading the cosmos, adrisht, unseen, achintya, beyond thought, undifferentiated consciousness, nirvishesh chinmatram, that all-knowing intelligence, sarvpratyay darshanin, that completeness and fulfillment, purna, that indivisibility, akhanda, avibhajya, that is Brahm. And Brahm is above all nirguna, attributeless. So Mahatma Gandhi, in my view, and from what little I have read of him, was immersed in religion in order to emerge even more immersed in spirituality. And religion had no barriers for him. And Adi Shankaracharya, 1200 years ago, was pursuing spirituality, almost qualifying to be called an atheist. It may surprise you that 5 of the 6 systems of Hindu philosophy are technically atheist. They are not talking about divinity. They are not talking about Ishwar. They are not talking about God. As I said, they are talking about what could be the truth possibly, which explicates this universe that we live in and the role of our own lives within it. Therefore, I think that just as Shankaracharya considered the Upanishads to be Shruti, revealed texts, Abhivakt Granth, Mahatma Gandhi was also, the example I just quoted to you of the shlok of the Isha Upanishad, was greatly influenced by the Upanishads. And both of them are essentially not only dialogic, but they have the most profound elliptical, sometimes almost incidental insights into that reality which they are seeking. The great Mahavakyas of the Upanishads, Tat Tvamasi, that thou art. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahm. Brahm and I are the same. I am Mahatma Brahm. Pragyanam Brahm. Brahm is consciousness. And in my view, therefore, that is the starting point. Why they were both essentially spiritual people. Spiritual individuals who transcended religion not by rejecting religion, but by seeing beyond religion. And that requires a different kind of vision. And so, they never saw spirituality, and I think this is relevant to our times, in exclusivist terms. And somehow it has been, I believe, with great courage of conviction, the foundations of the essential vision of Hinduism. In the Rig Veda, the greatly powerful line is Ekam Sat Viprada Bahuda Vadanti. In other words, there is one truth, different people call it by different names. That eclecticism, that enlightened flexibility that allows you to accept another interpretation without believing it to be either blasphemy or heresy. How do we bring that intellectual flexibility into play? Udar Charitanam Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. An oft quoted, almost a cliche today. Almost a cliche. But it imbibes within it a philosophy. And it says, for the big-hearted, the entire world is a family. Ano bhadraha kritavo yantu vishvata. Let good thoughts flow to me from all directions, not one direction. And I believe that if you look at Shankaracharya and the great commentaries he wrote on the 3 fundamental texts of Hinduism, as you know, the foundational texts of Hinduism are Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutra. The commentaries he wrote on them are fascinating because in the commentaries he accommodates in a substantial way the opposing point of view. So actually the commentary will have a portion which says opponent, and you allow the opponent to put in their point of view, and then you counter it by saying Vedantin. Now the believer in Vedant or the Advait school of philosophy counters this, and then again the opponent. So when I say it's dialogic, it's eclectic, it's inclusive, it's accommodating, it tolerates even if you differ with each other. I think that was the debate that Adi Shankaracharya had. He differed with these other 5-6 systems of philosophy. But he was prepared to put down that difference not as absolute rejection. Please understand the meaning of this. It means that I don't agree with you, but it does not mean that you are absolutely wrong. It's something we are forgetting today. It means that he had differences with Buddhism, for instance. And there are unreliable hagiographies which say that he was born as the avatar of Shiva to wipe out Buddhism from the land of India, almost making him into a crusader. And I don't buy that theory. And I have just written a book on Adi Shankaracharya, so I have some qualifications to say that. Yes, he differed, but there is such an overlap between Hinduism and Buddhism, and actually between the best of all religions. In fact, Shankaracharya is called a crypto-Buddhist. His whole Mayavad is so similar to the transience and impermanence essayed in greater depth by later Buddhist philosophers. So there is a difference, because the Bij word of Buddhism is dukkha, sorrow and the way out of sorrow, and the Bij word of Hinduism is anand. You were Anand, you are Anand, you will be Anand. Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham Shivoham. That's the only difference. So he had his differences, but it was not one of rejection. It was not one of contempt. It was not one of hostility. It was not one that was based on hatred, anger, dismissal. These are important lessons. And what about Mahatma Gandhi? Mahatma Gandhi, I think in his prayer sabhas, included the best hymns of all the religions. For anyone to write Ishwar Allah Tero Naam, Sabko Sanmati De Bhagwan, and to sing it. Today he may have been gheraud for committing political blasphemy. But to see the divinity in all, in a manner that you actually begin to tap the best in religion, be it the Bible, be it Tolstoy, be it Emerson, be it Thoreau. So, the point I'm making is that eclecticism was there in Adi Shankaracharya, that eclecticism was there in Mahatma Gandhi, that search and inspiration, that spirituality ignites there in both, and I think the natural consequence of their spiritual conviction of that higher power was that even though in differing degrees, because you have to bring the space of chronology, 1200 years before and now, in their own ways they were, although there are critics of this point of view, they were in their own ways egalitarian in their approach. The whole notion of equality or relative equality or the belief of equality, even in principle. You're all familiar of the story. And by the way, this anecdote appears in almost every biographical account of Adi Shankaracharya, where in the narrow lanes of Kashi, he comes across what was then called a Chandal, an untouchable, someone for those times of the lower caste. He is a Nambudri Brahmin, and he is being removed from his path as he goes to the ghat, and then the Chandal says, but you say that Brahm is immanent in you and in me. We are all emanations, Ek Omkar. Sikhism, in fact, I believe, and Indira ji listens to Shabads in the morning and so do I, is the essence of Vedanta. It's the essence of Vedanta. Ek Omkar, you are that. सभी उस नूर के उपजे हैं. वो बिंब है, हम प्रतिबिंब हैं. So how can these human categories of distinctions come about? And that is when it is said that Adi Shankaracharya wrote just a short stotram, Prakaran Granth, or a stotram called Manisha Panchakam. Spontaneously, it is said, and it is there in the anthology that accompanies my book, where he says, Chandalustusa tu dvijostu, Guru Reshti, Manisha Mama. If you are a Chandal or a twice born, for me, you are like my Guru. That is not what I would like, that is not what I believe. Manisha Mama, that is my resolve. And this theme occurs more than once in his writings. I mean, Nirvana Shatakam, you all hear in the mornings, Na main mrityu shanka, na main jati bheda. Pita neva main neva mata na janma. Na bandhur na mitram gurur neva shishya. Chidananda rupa shivoham 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 shivoham. So, this theme is repeated not once, in many of his commentaries. And in the case of Gandhiji, of course, I need hardly say how greatly he fought for the basic fact that all human beings are equal. And I have not the slightest doubt, and that's why I call the coincidence of belief that apart from the modern notions of equality, fraternity, egalitarianism, democracy, apart from all of those, he was actually also inspired by the essential spiritual vision that we are all emanations of that one overwhelming, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, all-pervasive power. So it is that which was also his underlying vision. And I recall when my book was launched in Chennai, and I was in conversation with Mr. Gopal Gandhi. You would know him, Sukanya. And it was a wonderfully enjoyable discussion. And Gopalji kept saying to me, but Shankaracharya was such a great revolutionary thinker, yet so much inequality, so much discrimination, so much oppression, so much that is not the vision of what he had continues to happen. And my answer was in two parts. In fact, the debate ended on this, and then he, typically of him, in his very generous way, he sent me an email saying that your response, I had no answer, so we had to end our discussion. Firstly, I said, Shankaracharya was not a social reformer. Please bear it in mind. He was born in Kerala, he died in Kedarnath, and he died at the age of 32. He walked, not once but thrice. He took Samadhi in Kedarnath. He was not a social reformer. Social reform that should have happened was a consequence of his philosophical belief. They were not the primary target of what he was aspiring for. In the case of Gandhiji, his primary target was the change in society which should accompany political change. So there is a difference. But yes, societies take longer to change than merely as philosophers wanted, or even, and this is what I told Gopalji, even as politicians wanted, because I told him that your grandfather spent a lifetime and undoubtedly was the century's greatest messiah of peace, if not for the last 1,000 years, the greatest messiah of peace. He fought for our freedom and won it on the basis of non-violence. But has violence gone away from India today? It has not. Because societies take longer to change than the vision of those who and from this flows the fact that I believe both Adi Shankaracharya and Mahatma Gandhi believed in the resolution of differences through a particular instrumentality which is fast becoming extinct in our country. It is called Shastrarth, dialogue, debate. When Adi Shankaracharya in his life, his most pivotal moment of his life was his Shastrarth with Mandan Mishra. Mandan Mishra was a proponent of the Purv Miman school, which is the Karm Kandi school, which believed that if you follow the rituals as prescribed by the Vedas in the manner that they are prescribed, that in themselves is the way to moksha. And Adi Shankara's path was the Jnana Marg, the path of knowledge, not ritual. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That was his path. And he had that tremendous dialogue, which went on for weeks, and I don't know by what methodology, because internet and social messaging did not exist there, but it did capture the imagination of almost all of Bharat and change in a manner the evolution of Hinduism. But it was a civilized dialogue. And who was the empire? Mandan Mishra's wife. And he agreed that she will not be partial. She will, when she was herself a very learned lady, almost considered to be an avatar of Saraswati, that she will be the empire and we will debate. And they have a debate. And the important thing is that they resolved their differences through debate, and finally Mandan Mishra became a follower of Adi Shankaracharya, in fact his most prominent follower. But exactly the same is the situation with Mahatma Gandhi. If you see the letters that between, for instance, Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi, there is a constant debate going on, and I must say a great deal of rather transparent impatience by Jawaharlal Nehru at the zigzag turns that Mahatma Gandhi would take quite unexpectedly and for many people irrationally in the course of the freedom movement, and suddenly escape to his ashram. But they would have a debate, and he would say his point of view and he would say his point of view. So I think that in itself was something that was there, which continued with Gandhiji. Another thing that made them, in a sense, linked was that for all their pursuits, which could have been either philosophical or purely political, they believed in public service, which I want to call engaged spirituality. You may be inspired or imbued by a spiritual vision, but that is not enough. Personal redemption is not enough. Can you do something for society as well? And in the case of Mahatma Gandhi, we know that fighting for the freedom movement, for freedom from the British, he also worked incessantly, in fact even more perhaps, to bring about the desired social changes in life. And in the case of Adi Shankaracharya, you may or may not know, but in that short life of 32 years, he set up 4 mutts. Sringeri in the south, Dwarka, Puri, and in Joshimath. And worked incessantly to create an institutional basis where the teachings of Hinduism could be not only preserved, taught, and propagated. So both of them believed that, in a sense, there is more to life than merely personal redemption. In spite of the ashrams that Mahatma Gandhi built, he was there to fight for causes which belonged to other people and which were for the good of other people, in which he saw his own good. That's why one of his favorite hymns was Vaishna Vajante Tene Kahi. That is why. Veer parai jane re. Somebody else's problem is my problem as well. Both of them I know. Now this is fact. We're greatly influenced by the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, as I just mentioned, was one of the foundational texts of Hinduism. There are only three, and Bhagavad Gita is one of them. And Shankaracharya wrote a very learned commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, almost on every stanza of it. And his takeaway from that was Karma Yoga Nishkam Karma. How to work without expectation of abhyudaya or reward. And I know and you know how much the Bhagavad Gita played a role in Mahatma Gandhi's life. Both of them were also, in their own ways, iconoclastic. In other words, they had the courage to break what was expected of them by society. Mahatma Gandhi did not believe in the taboos of religion. He wanted temples to be opened up for all. And in his own time and for his own context. Adi Shankaracharya had promised his mother, when as a child of 8 he was leaving to become a sannyasin. And his mother, and he was the only child and she was a widow, was against it. But when the calling is that great, he finally, and there's a little story to it, which I hope you read my book, you'll know. He finally persuades her to let go. But he says to her, I will return to you when you need me. And when she is unwell, and in fact, on her deathbed, he returns. And contrary to the very well documented and rigorous code for a sannyasin, which made certain things to be in the category of near blasphemy, he touches his mother's feet. A sannyasin was not supposed to do that. And then he says, I will not only touch her feet and pay obeisance, I will do her cremation myself. That too was not done by a sannyas. And the whole community boycotts him. And it is said that he himself then actually, if you've been to Kaladi, you can see the spot and you can meet with the people. He cut up her body because nobody in the village was going to help him. And he cremates it himself. And even today, among the Mudri Brahmins, I'm told that symbolically you put a knife on all the joints just before the cremation. So both were iconoclasts. 2 or 3 more points. Both were, perhaps it's difficult to understand in today's consumerist world, both were essentially above the enticement of material pleasures. I mean, Gandhiji's simplicity became almost impossible to emulate. His complete transcendence of the seductions of material pleasure, the completely limited nature of his personal possessions, his complete imperviousness to wealth, and in the case of Shankaracharya also, absolutely, one of his most moving stotras is one he writes on the loincloth, where each line just ends by saying, Kaupinavanta khalu, bhagyavanta. The loincloth is such a blessing, nothing else. Lost in the pursuit of truth, living on the offerings that I get, sitting under a tree, under the open sky, with not the thought of a possession on my mind, just the loincloth that I wear. That is enough for me. So they were both above that. And the last 2 points, because I'm trying to, when I was asked to speak on, both were assimilators. Now, you may think that given the strength of their beliefs and their courage of conviction in pursuing it without diluting their ideological commitment to it, they would be inflexible in terms of taking people along. But actually both were assimilators. Adi Shankaracharya is called the Shanmat Sthapanacharya, a man who revived Hinduism and once again brought the many different sects within Hinduism within the larger ideological umbrella of the philosophical vision again. And he did it by a simple sleight of hand, more or less. He divided knowledge itself into two categories, Paravidya and Aparavidya. Paravidya is that which has now become transcendental. When you've had the Brahm Anubhav, when you live in bliss, when you are completely above any other need or support or practice or belief, you are already in that state of Turiya where there is only bliss, peace, fulfillment. And Aparavidya is that which prepares you for Paravidya. And in Aparavidya, he allowed anyone to pursue anything they want. Puja, Path, Bhakti, Prapatti, Atma Samarpan, surrender, yoga. Do what you wish. So long as somewhere in that practice, it is not only for your material gain, but the negation of your ego. Because the moment you negate the ego, it's almost as if you open the doorways to perhaps a higher spiritual experience. And so therefore, Shankaracharya, allowed a lot of the other sects to be also included in his path as part of the Aparavidya phase which takes you to the Paravidya. And Mahatma Gandhi, I think as an assimilator, even with those who differed with him in the Congress, except when it came to a point where it meant the complete demolition of what he stood for, carried with him people. You know that even with the Muslim League, at the time of the partition, he was willing to talk. He was willing to talk to Jinnah. He was willing to talk to people whom people were not willing to talk to, because he wanted to carry people along. He built a mass movement called the Congress Party by carrying people of many different strands and beliefs along with him. So they were both assimilators. And lastly, I think somewhere in the lives of in all our lives, there are moments when you want to put the burden even of your aspirations that you live for in total surrender. Bhakti. And in that moments of bhakti, which require annihilation in order for resuscitation, where you annihilate yourself to once again acquire the energy to be who you wish to be. Mahatma Gandhi's prayer sabhas were about bhakti. And you all know that along with that, what plays even today at the time of beating retreat, abide with me. Who am I? You, that power. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide, the darkness deepens. Lord, with me abide. That's bhakti. Lord, with me abide. I may be a Mahatma, but Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. And Adi Shankaracharya writes, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudmante, Samprapte Sannahate Kale Nahi Rakshate Dukra Karne. Bhaja Govindam. Just surrender. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. You all heard M.S. Subbulakshmi sing it. Mudmate, just learn to surrender. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatni shayanam. Ehi sansare bahu dustare, kripiya pare, pahi morare, bhaja govindam, Bhaj Govindam. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Indira Varma will be shortly proposing the vote of thanks to Mr. Pavan Varma, but on behalf of the Sarvodaya International Trust, I request Mrs. Sukanya Bharatram, Trustee, to kindly present a memento to Mr. Pavan Varma. The senior students of Springdales School, Dholakua, now present an affirmation of love and faith in the Mahatma through amazing and historical exchanges of letters between Gandhi and some of the giants of the independence movement. These letters have been very kindly researched by Mrs. Indira Varma, Chairperson, and our collection reveals thoughts that breathe and words that burn. They have a vital message for the reader. I present the senior student of Springdale School, Dholakua.
The poet Rabindranath Tagore gave him the title Mahatma, the great soul. To the struggling masses of India, he endeared himself as Bapu, the father of the nation. As we celebrate 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma, we affirm our love and faith in Mahatma through prose and letters. Throughout his life, Gandhiji ceaselessly struggled to douse the fire of hatred with love. And he was alone in his quest. The warrior for peace finally had to sacrifice his life to the bullets of his assassin. But could the assassin kill the spirit and idea that Mahatma embodied? In the words of poetess Sarojini Naidu,
like Christ of old on the third day, he has risen again in answer to the cry of his people and the call of the world for the continuance of his guidance, his love, his service, and inspiration. This man so ascetic, living on the verge by choice, so as to be more in harmony with the life of the poor. How was it that he exercised over the entire world such power as emperors could never wield? It was because he did not care for applause. He did not care for censure. He only cared for the path of righteousness. He believed that though the whole world slaughter itself and the whole world's blood be shed, still his non-violence would be the authentic foundation of the new civilization of the world.
in the same spirit, Nehru wrote,
"A glory has departed, and the sun that warmed and brightened our lives has set, and we shiver in the cold and dark. Yet, he would not have us feel this way. After all that glory that we saw for all these years, that man with the divine fire changed us also. We have been molded by him during these years, and out of that divine fire, many of us also took a small spark, which strengthened and made us work to some extent on the lines that he fashioned. Great men and eminent men have monuments in bronze and marble set up for them, but this man of divine fire managed in his lifetime to become enshrined in millions and millions of hearts. He lives in the hearts of millions, and he will live for immemorial ages.
Sarojini Naidu reminded the leaders that the time is not for mourning, but to take up the challenge and follow the footsteps of Mahatma.
The time is over for beating of breasts and tearing of hair. The time is here when we stand up and say, we take up the challenge to those who defied Mahatma Gandhi. We are his living symbols. We are his soldiers. We are the carriers of his banner before an embattled world. Our banner is truth. Our shield is non-violence. Our sword is the sword of the Spirit that conquers without blood. Let the people of India rise up and wipe their tears. Rise up and still their sobs. Rise up and be full of hope and full of cheer. Shall we not follow in the footsteps of our Master? Shall we not obey the mandates of our Father? Shall not we, his soldiers, carry his battle to triumph? Shall we not give to the world the complete message of Mahatma Gandhi? Though his voice will not speak again, have we not 1,000,000 voices to bear his message to the world? Not only to this world, but to the world generation after generation. Shall his sacrifice be in vain?
Gandhi was greatly influenced by Leo Tolstoy. Tolstoy's ideal of simplicity of life and purity of purpose influenced Gandhi deeply. Mahatma Gandhi had found in Leo Tolstoy a true mentor, but it was not a one-sided relationship.
I take the liberty of inviting your attention to what has been going on in the Transvaal for nearly 3 years. There is in that colony a British Indian population of nearly 13,000. These Indians have for several years labored under the various legal disabilities. The prejudice against color and in some respect against Asiatics is intense in that colony. The climax was reached 3 years ago with a law which I and many others consider to be degrading. I felt that submission to law of this nature was inconsistent with the spirit of true religion. I and some of my friends were and still are firm believers in the destruction of non-violent resistance to evil. I had the privilege of studying your writings also, which left a deep impression on my mind. At present, there are over 100 passive resistors in the Transvaal goals. Some of these have been very poor men, earning their livelihood from day to day. The result has been that their wives and children have had to be supported out of public contributions, also largely raised from passive resistors. Together with a friend, I have come here to see the imperial authorities and to place before them the position and to view to seeking redress.
In response to Gandhiji, Tolstoy wrote,
Your work in Transvaal, which seems to be far away from the center of our world, is yet the most fundamental and the most important to us, supplying the most weighty, practical proof in which the world can now share and with which must participate, not only the Christians, but all the peoples of the world. I think that it would give you pleasure to know that with us in Russia, a similar movement is also developing rapidly under the form of the refusal of military service augmenting year after year. However small may be the number of your participators in non-resistance and the number of those in Russia who refuse military service, both the one and the other may assert with audacity that God is with us and that God is more powerful than men.
Gandhi always wanted villages of India to be self-contained. Gandhi always wanted villages of India to be self-contained. Industrialization on a mass scale would necessarily lead to the exploitation of the villages. The letters between Gandhi and Nehru show differences in their ideals.
I hold that without truth and non-violence, there can be nothing but destruction for humanity. We can realize truth and non-violence only in the simplicity of village life. And this simplicity can best be found in the charkha and all that the charkha represents. You must not imagine that I am envisaging our life as it is today. My ideal village life will contain intelligent human beings. They will not live in dirt and darkness as animals. Men and women will be free and able to hold their own against anyone in the world. There will be neither plague, nor cholera, nor smallpox. No one will be idle. No one will wallow in luxury. Everyone will have to contribute his quota of manual labor.
I do not understand why a village should necessarily embody truth and non-violence. A village, normally speaking, is backward intellectually and culturally, and no progress can be made from a backward environment. Narrow-minded people are much more likely to be untruthful and violent. In the present context of the world, we cannot even advance culturally without a strong background of scientific research in every department. From the economic or political point of view, an isolated India may well be a kind of vacuum which increases the acquisitive tendencies of others and thus create conflicts. But there seems to be no reason why millions should not have comfortable, up-to-date homes where they can lead a cultured existence.
Gandhi, even while defending to the last his vision of India outlined in Hind Swaraj and rejecting Nehru's criticisms, was careful to once again affirm that the bond that unites them was not only political work, it was immeasurably deeper and quite unbreakable. Gandhi lived and died for the cause of Hindu-Muslim unity. The resolution for the establishment of a separate homeland for the Muslims of British India passed in the annual session of the All India Muslim League held in Lahore in 1940. Mr. Jinnah insisted that an essential precondition to any agreement between the two organizations was the recognition by the Congress that the Muslim League was the sole authoritative and representative political organization of the Muslims of India.
I have already given you all the clarifications you require so far as the Lahore resolution goes and its text is concerned. Apart from the inconsistencies and contradictions of the various positions that you have adopted in the course of our correspondence, can you not appreciate our point of view that we claim the right of self-determination as a nation and not as a territorial unit, and that we are entitled to our inherent right as a Muslim nation, which is our birthright?
The more I think about the two nations theory, the more alarming it appears to be. I am unable to accept the proposition that the Muslims of India are a nation distinct from the rest of the inhabitants of India. Mere assertion is no proof. The consequences of accepting such a proposition are dangerous in the extreme. Once the principle is admitted, there would be no limit to claims for cutting up India into numerous divisions, which would spell India's ruin.
Gandhi's philosophy was based on ahimsa or non-violence. Abdul Ghaffar Khan, also known as Badshah Khan, forged a close spiritual and uninhibited friendship with Gandhi. The two had deep admiration towards each other and worked together closely till 1947. On the issue of referendum for frontier provinces, Gandhiji wrote,
Dear Badshah, in the present state of tension and misrepresentation, Khudai Khidmat Gars should not vote at all, one way or the other, and that they could come to a decision as to the choice between the Union or Pakistan when the constitutions of the two were promulgated, and when the front had fashioned its own autonomous constitution. Above all, every occasion for clash with the Muslim League members was to be avoided. Boycott would certainly result in a legal victory, but it would be a moral defeat. If, without the slightest fear of violence from your side, the bulk of Pathans refrained in a dignified manner from participating in the referendum.
Abdul Ghaffar Khan was greatly concerned with the growing violence among Pathans. He wrote to Gandhi,
I and my workers have been going about from village to village, asking the people to remain absolutely non-violent, even under provocation on the part of the Muslim League members. The Muslim League members are daily taking out processions, raising highly objectionable slogans. They call us kafirs and resort to abusive language. I have personally been hooted. We are working under very difficult and trying circumstances, but have adhered to non-violence in thought, word, and deed. How long a state of affairs like this can last, it is not easy for me to say. We have done everything humanly possible to avoid a clash. There's no other way for salvation for the Pathans except through non-violence.
while the 21st century has been defined by globalization, free markets, privatization, liberalization, it has also been marked by violence, environmental degradation, extremism, inequity, poverty, and disparity. Amidst all this, if one poses the question of relevance of Gandhiji to our age, one is struck by an astounding need for him for our times. Gandhiji's ideas and leadership hold an extremely relevant moral and social mirror to our society. More than any other time, we need Gandhi.
O mystic lotus, sacred and sublime, in myriad petaled grace, inviolate, supreme or transient storms of tragic fate, deep-rooted in the waters of all time. What legends loose from many a far-off clime, of wild bee hoods with lips insatiate, and hungry winds with wings of hope or hate, have thronged and pressed round thy miraculous prime, to devastate thy loveliness, to drain the midmost rapture of thy glorious heart. But who could win thy secret? Who attain thine ageless beauty, or pluck thine immortality? Who art coeval with the lords of life and death? My Father, do not rest. Do not allow us to rest. Keep us to our pledge. Give us strength to fulfill our promise. Your heirs, your descendants, your stewards, the guardians of your dreams, and the fulfillers of India's destiny.
Gandhiji in flesh and blood is no more, but his spirit lives in the hearts and minds of all freedom-loving people. We end with a tribute from American writer and novelist Pearl S. Buck. He was right. He knew he was right. We all knew he was right. However long the follies of the violence continue, they but prove that Gandhi was right. Resist to the very end, he said, but without violence. Of violence, the world is sick. O India, dare to be worthy of your Gandhi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Sarvodaya International Trust and the India National Center, I thank you for coming to our program celebrating Gandhi. Thank you. As you are aware, with our invites and Mrs. Jyoti Bose's opening address, this year starts the commencement of a year-long celebration of 150th year of Gandhiji's birth date. I thank Pavanji, very much Pavanji, for your precious time. I thank Pavanji for his thought-provoking talk on coincidence of belief and his very precious time for our trust. I thank the students of Springdales and the teachers of Springdales who always stand tall and do us proud. These children finished their exams day before yesterday, and they had a concert yesterday which they finished, and Jyoti somehow managed to bring this up, what you saw. Thank you, Jyoti. The study and the curating of these letters has been a very, very enriching experience for me. Not having studied Indian history, it has been a complete revelation. In 2009, when Barack Obama was visiting Wakefield High School in the US, a 9th grader asked the would-be president, if you could have dinner with someone dead or alive, who would it be? Obama chuckled and answered, well, dead or alive, that's a pretty long list you've given me. But I think it would be Mahatma Gandhi, for he is my hero. Christ gave us goals. Christ gave us goals, but the Mahatma gave us the tactics, said Martin Luther Jr. These days we get lots of WhatsApp, some humorous, some jokes, Recently, I got one from my son who lives overseas, which made me sit up. And this is a WhatsApp on Sanjeev Sanyal talking about lapses in history, of how hundreds and hundreds of years have been wiped out by the history that we know. We haven't read the real history that our country should be, or I hope soon will be proud of. If you can, see him on YouTube, Sanjeev Sanyal. Some of the letters exchanged hold historical facts and the movement, the turbulent times. What captivated me was their mode of address to each other. And my talk will take not more than 3-4 minutes more, but it's very sentimental, and I thought this is what I should bring out today. They were troubled times, turbulent times, and today also we are going through a very turbulent period in our country. I think world over, there are at any given time 40 wars waging in the world, and there is enough in our own country too. So these giants at that time who were shaping the freedom of our country and our destinies were soft-hearted, just like any one of us. And what I'm going to read out to you just now is something very brief of how they addressed each other over these periods of time. Two people I've taken. One is Hitler and one is Sarojini Naidu. How Gandhiji addresses them and how during the time his relationship and his address to them changes. To Hitler, he writes, "Dear friend, that I address you as a friend is no formality. I own no foes. My business in life has been for the past 33 years to enlist the friendship of whole humanity by befriending mankind, irrespective of race, creed, or color." To Sarojini Naidu, and these are the most sweetest and sentimental letters. To Sarojini Naidu, the letter starts very casual, the first few letters, very formal. "Dear friend," she replies, "Dear Mr. Gandhi." A year or two later, it becomes, "Dear sister." She replies, "Most beloved Bapu." In 26, Sarojini writes to him, "From the wandering singer to the spinner stay at home." He writes again in 1927, "My dear Mirabai." She reverts, "My mystic spinner." He further calls her, "My dear peacemaker." In September 32, he calls her, "Dear mother, singer, and guardian of my soul. I have your letter giving me all the information about dogs and daughters. I suppose you put the dogs first because they are less troublesome." As late as 1944, he addresses her as "My dear Amma Jan." You know, Sarojini Naidu called Mahatma Gandhi the chocolate-colored Mickey Mouse. And he called her the Bulbul. In Urdu, poetry, and we use this word very often, istiare. Istiare means words of endearment. Sweetheart, beloved, darling, dearest. These are, इसको कहते हैं इस्तियारे. एक अपनी ही गजल का मैं कपलेट एंड कर रही हूँ अपनी टॉक. ज़मीं से आसमान के सब सितारे बांट लेते हैं. ज़मीन से आसमां के सब सितारे बांट लेते हैं, चमक लफ्जों में रखकर इस्तियारे बांट लेते हैं। I would like all of you to take a vow today with us at the commencement of this historical year. Let us be more considerate. Let us be more passionate. Let us be more compassionate to each other, irrespective of creed, color, or whatever, or religion. Jai Hind.
वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए थे, पीर पराए जाने रे। वैष्णव जन तो